Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Building Loved Businesses, the show where we share the stories of business owners who are building companies that are truly loved by their customers, their employees, and their communities. I'm your host, Nathan Schock. Today, I'm joined by Dan Frisch, co-owner and president of Cullen Insulation. Dan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell us, for those who don't know, tell us about Cullen Insulation. What is the company do? What's it look like? Just give us a description of the company today.
Sure. Yeah, we're a independent insulation contractor. We're also a certified energy expert through the Owens Corning program. So we insulate mostly new construction, new homes, new apartments, light commercial, post-frame buildings, agricultural buildings. We also insulate existing homes, retrofit, remodeling type work. Mostly insulation, fiberglass, and spray foam. Your traditional fiberglass. Spray foam's gotten fairly popular. We do a fair amount of that as well. And then a couple of our branches do some ancillary products like spray applied air barrier and waterproofing, that sort of thing. So we have a couple branches that specialize in that as well. But again, yeah, mostly new homes, new apartments. It differs by market. In Fargo here, we do a lot of single family homes and apartments. Some of our branches they do mostly multifamily, so it differs by the market. But yeah, we do all that.
Yeah, and for those of us, for those of our listeners from the southern half of the United States, insulation is a little more important in Dan's markets, right? So maybe
Yeah, it's
give us the locations where we can find a Cullen Insulation, Dan.
Yeah, so we started in Fargo. That's our biggest branch. So we're in Fargo, we're in Grand Forks, North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and most recently, within the last 5 years, out in Bozeman, Montana.
Okay. Now, when you went to college there in the Fargo Moorhead area, you didn't picture this role, right? You were doing something else.
No,
So give us the story about how you ended up at Cullen.
so I went to college at Concordia here in Moorhead, Minnesota, and my first love, what I really enjoyed, was investment banking. I wanted to work on Wall Street, and that's kind of what I envisioned. I enjoyed that. I had my kind of your mock stocks you could trade, and I always enjoyed that. But my uncle was into the nursing home, senior housing business, and he had told me that market is the demand for senior housing is going to go through the roof. And he was right. So actually, I switched my major to long-term care administration. So it was a business administration degree with a special sequence in long-term care. And I did some internships with a couple local nursing homes here, and that's what I majored in. My first job outside of college actually was for a reinsurance brokerage firm out of the Twin Cities. And it was a great company. It was an interesting job, but I found in under a year, I couldn't sit in a cubicle all day. I just couldn't do it. When it was lunch break time, rather than go down to the lunchroom, I went outside and walked around a lake. I had to do something. I just couldn't sit there all day. So anyway, I wasn't really fulfilled. In fairness, I probably didn't give it a long enough shot, but I left there because in the spring of '97, my high school hockey coach had this insulation business that he had started mostly out of necessity. He needed some extra money, and he would insulate in the evenings and weekends to make extra money to pay for his house. So he was on a teacher's salary, and he needed some extra money at the time. So anyhow, back in the spring of '97, we were sandbagging here. We had a pretty bad flood, and I was back here helping. He had said, "Well, I could use some help with my business." He had 5 employees at the time, and it was growing, and he needed help with estimating and quality control and all kinds of stuff. So he said, "If you want to come help me as a transitional job, just to see what you think. And I did it. I didn't plan on staying very long, but I really fell in love with it. I love being part of a small business, and I was doing work out in the field. I was invoicing, estimating. I was catching stray cats in our warehouse. I was doing everything. So
Yeah.
I I enjoyed it.
So
And
you're,
Terry,
yeah.
like I said, he was my high school hockey coach, but he was great to work for. Really a good guy, and he took care of all of his employees really well, and I enjoyed working there. So that was in '97, and I haven't left. I'm still here. So
So your 30-year transitional job.
yeah, yeah. You never know. I guess I in college. I mean, I never dreamt of working in the construction field, but I really enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it.
Yeah. Good for you. They
Yeah,
say, find work that find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. So,
yeah. I found that almost all the people I work with, from colleagues to builders to homeowners, they're mostly all great people, and you develop a lot of good relationships, and I enjoy working with them.
yeah. Um, so your role looks very different today, right? You're
What? Yeah,
now you're
yeah,
co-owner and president, and
yeah.
90 employees, 5 locations. How have you, because those are different jobs, right? How have you continued to grow as a leader, as a business owner? How have you done that um, successfully to help keep Cullen Insulation growing?
Yeah, like I say, I've been involved in helping to manage the daily operations for years. Terry, over the years, he placed more and more trust in me to kind of run things if he had to be out of town for a few days or whatever. So I kind of got my feet wet with managing the daily operations and taking on inventory control and ordering, and developing relationships with our vendors and that sort of thing. So I slowly took on more responsibility, and then, gosh, I don't know if it's been 10 years or so when Terry had decided that he wanted to retire. The opportunity came up, and my partner Eric and I, um, we decided to buy the company from Terry and kind of just continue on with the progression of what we've been doing. I mean, Eric, he's a real bright guy. He's a great partner. He's very smart. He grew up with insulation. His dad was an insulator, and he grew up insulating throughout high school and college, so he understood the business. And while he was working for us, he earned his MBA in the evenings at NDSU, and he actually went to law school for a year and didn't like that. But it's been a good journey with Eric. I mean, he's a real bright business mind, and just a really good person. So I couldn't ask for a better partner. He's really been good, and between the two of us, I mean, we're kind of, the more we grow, we kind of lean on each other for um, management ideas or situations we might be having. But you kind of grow as you take on more responsibility. I mean, there's still things that come up that are new to me, um, but together we handle them, and it's been a fun journey.
Yeah. So now, and what does your role look like today, and how do you divide up the responsibilities as partners? Because um, we've done, I don't know, probably 30 to 40 episodes of Building Love Businesses. And there's been more than a couple who have said, I started a partnership and it did not go well, right?
Yep.
That's a very important thing to get right. And
Yeah.
so,
No.
yeah, so maybe just describe how you guys work together, and how you've been able to make that relationship successful.
Well, I think the number one thing is trust. Eric and I would consider us to be good friends, but we spend a lot of time talking. I mean, I'm married, but I probably spend more time talking with Eric, and throughout the course of the day, you kind of grow up together. every day you're dealing with similar and different situations. But I think trust is a big thing. I mean, when you go into business with someone, you place a lot of trust in them, and that part's worked out well. In terms of responsibilities, we kind of divide things up. I mean, traditionally, Fargo's had more of a larger workload, more responsibility. Eric built the Grand Forks branch from scratch, so he's kind of got a little more experience in being in a market that's fresh and new. So some of the things he would encounter, just knocking on doors, trying to get our foot in the door in different places, he really did have to deal with that from scratch. Whereas in Fargo, I came here and Terry, you know, certainly helped him grow the business, but we were already established at the time and continued to grow. So, but we split up responsibilities in terms of helping to manage our different markets. Eric probably helps out with some of our satellite offices. Traditionally, a little bit more than I have in the beginning, just because there's been more activity here in Fargo that I've helped to lead. But together we split up. I mean, I spend time down in Sioux Falls. Eric goes out to Bozeman. We split time up and try and stay in contact as on a regular basis with our people. But I do think trust is a huge thing. And like I said, Eric, he's got a lot of experience. We're a little bit different in the sense that I think Eric would agree with this. Like I'm very detail oriented on making sure we're following our programs, where Eric's more of a visionary. I mean, if it was up to Eric, we'd be installing carpet too. So, I mean, Eric's more of the visionary for sure. But I think we complement each other nicely. And but I do think trust is a big thing when you're going into partnership with someone. I've never done it before, but in my mind, it's huge.
Yeah. Okay. I want to key in on something else you said there, right? You talked about the different locations, because I also talk to lots of businesses that want to grow, and they're trying to decide, do we go deeper where we're at, right? Do we go there, or do we broaden out and go into other markets? And so how did you think about, as you wanted to grow Cullen, how did you come to those decisions? I know at least one you told me beforehand, it was almost an accident that a market came along. But as you thought about strategically about how you grow things, what led you to these other markets?
Well, I think initially working in Grand Forks it's only an hour north of here, so it's we had done some work in Grand Forks and then again out in Bismarck. And then eventually into Sioux Falls. So when you're doing work in these different markets initially for customers that are based out of Fargo. So we follow them out there to do some work, and then you know depending on the market, if it's a busy segment of that business community and it's a growing community, it makes sense to spend time there and trying to develop your business in those areas. I, Part of it is the market underserved? If there's already 12 insulators there, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of a saturated market, but if there's a demand for your service and you feel like you can do a good job, I think that's a big thing. Like if you feel like you can do a good job and you've got the resources to do it, um, in one of our markets, we kind of got too much work at the beginning, and we had a tough time servicing it. So it's kind of a learning process. Like, okay, if we're going to take on this work, we need to make sure we're doing a great job. Quality's got to come first, and we want to take care of our customers. That's kind of our main thing. We try really hard to take care of our customers and make sure they're happy with the product they're getting and the service they're getting. Um, but I think it's like I said, initially we were following our customers out there to do some work, and then in the Bozeman situation, we had a lot of contractors ask us to bid their work. They liked the way we did things. Ironically, it's kind of, in the North Dakota and Minnesota market, the construction standards, some of the codes, they're a lot more strict with air sealing and some things that they're not as, I don't want to say important, but they're not as critical in other areas of the country. I mean, we live in the Fargo Grand Forks area, this region of the country. We live in it's the hardest area to insulate, and we go to different insulation conferences, and it's hard because there's zero forgiveness. I mean, you got 40 below wind chill. If you miss something, you've got a frozen pipe like that, and it's you got 40 below in the winter, and then you've got 100 degrees and humid in the summer. So there's such a swing of
Yeah.
conditions. It's a tough market.
Yeah.
So for things to get sealed up correctly, and some of the other insulation contractors we might visit with in other areas of the country, um, they don't. They're just surprised at the level of detail that has to go into some of these projects for air sealing and that sort of thing. So um, doing things to the standards we have here. Um, some of the contractors in the Bozeman market were impressed with how we did things, and they asked us to bid more work. So that's how we ended up in Bozeman. We went out there to do some work for a customer, and we ended up staying because there was a lot of demand, and we just felt it was a good market to set up camp.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you've got this successful business in Fargo, and one of the challenges that comes with expansion, right, and going into new markets is maintaining the kind of good, productive business culture that you have. That's relatively easy because you're there, right, and you can kind of monitor and see how things go and keep things in line. How do you think about that when it comes to managing other markets and making sure that they uphold the same standards that made you successful in Fargo? I know earlier you said, one of the things you learned from the founder was the importance of taking care of people. So as you think about that, maintaining the culture as you go into new markets, how does Cullen do that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Eric and I, we talk about that quite a bit because we feel like we've got a good recipe on how to run things, and we do things different than other installation contractors. Um, but we feel like we have a good recipe. So to replicate that in some of the other markets when you're not there on a daily basis, it is a challenge. And we've gone through a couple different managers because it just wasn't working out, and it's just really important to make sure that you've got a manager that believes in the system and adopts your mindset on how we do things. We do a lot of things that I don't know that other people do. We all still get to work at 5 in the morning, and would I have to? No, probably wouldn't have to. That's one thing Terry always said was it's important to try and set an example. We'll be there. We're there at 5 in the morning. We help load the trucks. We're out there when it's 10 below and help the guys with their work orders and get things going. I think it's just important to be around the guys and let them know that, we're in this with them. There's a lot of mornings where it's not fun. I mean, it's 20, 30 below and there's snow flying, and it's not always fun, but we do a lot of the little things that we've always done. And we think that's important. I mean, we start early. Our crews get going early. We try and do that in the summer primarily because crawling around in an attic at 2 in the afternoon on a July afternoon isn't safe or fun. So we try and schedule things accordingly so that we can do the attic work early and then do some of the floor work in the afternoon. But I guess to your question, I think it is important that you try and reproduce some of the things or everything that you're doing in your offices that you're at with some of your satellite offices. And I do think that's important to follow the recipe and pay attention to detail. And there's been, like I said, there's been a couple instances where that didn't work out and we had to start over with someone different. And you know, Eric and I, we're trying to learn how to. I mean, we haven't always had 5 branches, so it's a learning process for us as well. You know, what's working, what isn't. Learning how to be a multi-branch office is not, it's not always easy, and we've made mistakes on some things, and we try and take note of that and make corrections, and do what we need to do to try and be synchronized throughout all the branches. So
Yeah. Well, and quite often, right, I talk to a lot of business owners, and when did they learn their best lessons? It's when things didn't go right, right?
right,
When things are going good, you don't generally learn. It's when something goes wrong. So
that's right. Yeah.
what's a good hard-earned lesson that you've had over the years that you could think of? What's something that didn't go right in the moment, but maybe had some important lessons come out of it?
I think probably the biggest lesson, I made reference to it a little bit earlier, was that you know it, to go get a bunch of work isn't the hard part. Like, you can do that, and you know especially when you're in a new market, to go get work, you can do that. But the problem is you only get one shot with some of these customers, and if you fall on your face because you took on too much too early, it's hard to get back in and try and prove yourself again. So I think the biggest lesson we've learned is controlled growth is a better approach than just going and trying to take on too much work at once, especially in a new office when you've got employees that are still learning the methods of how you do things, and we want to maintain our standards for quality and customer service. And if we take on too much too soon, that makes that pretty challenging. So we've learned that sometimes if you take on too much in a new office, it you know it it can be difficult. So that's probably the biggest lesson we've learned.
Um, in a previous job, I was um, a territory manager for Dairy Queen, right?
Okay.
And we had, whenever a new Dairy Queen was opening, guess when they wanted to open their doors for the first time, right? They wanted May, right? Like right
Yeah.
at the start of the summer. And
Yeah.
I would tell them, you do not want to start in the busiest time of the year,
Right.
right? You
Start in
want
October.
that's right. Get a few months under your belt before the couple hundred people want a day wanting a blizzard. But that's such an important lesson, is to set people up for success, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And not overdo it, because if you're like me as the owner entrepreneur, I'm like, go sell it and then we'll figure out how to fulfill it, right?
Right.
But
Yep.
that can cause its own challenges.
Yeah, and especially with a new office, there's such a balancing act between, if you have 4 employees, you want to have enough work to keep them steadily busy. If you don't have enough work, then it's,
Yeah.
do you have enough work to keep them busy? But then you land a couple bigger jobs, and all of a sudden you have too much work, so you need to hire more people, and it's not a consistent flow of work. So it's a challenge between how many employees do we need right now? How does it look for the next 3-4 months? And it's really a balancing act when you're getting going with a new branch, because it's you don't have the steady flow of work that you might have in some more of your established branches. So to start a new branch, it's a challenge that way for sure.
Yeah. Okay. You said, I think, to quote you, you had a good recipe for running things, and that one of the things you pride yourself on at Cullen is how well you take care of the customer. What's that part of what's that part of the recipe look like, Dan, for taking care of the customer? What's maybe something non-traditional that you guys do that really serves your customer well?
Well, I think, a couple things. We almost have two different customer types. We've got contractors and builders that are doing new construction work. And then you've got the homeowners that, you know, someone wants their attic touched up and they haven't had their attic looked at in 10 years, 12 years. So we almost have, they're all customers, but they're a little different in that sense that, the type of work you're doing, when you go into an existing home, it's important, you're going into someone's home. So not that cleanliness isn't important on a new construction, but it's a whole different dynamic when you're dealing with someone's personal home. So the one thing we try and do is, we want them. Obviously, we want referrals because we did a really good job and we were a great experience for the customer. But we try and treat it like, I don't want to sound cliche, but you want to do things the way you'd want them done. I always try and follow like the golden rule, and you can adjust it to your situation, I guess, depending on what you're doing. But we do think like, you want to treat people the way you'd want to be treated. When people are investing, for most people, their home is it's their biggest investment, and insulation. It's not. Most people don't think of insulation as an important thing. Some people do, but they're looking at granite countertops and their cabinets and the things you see. But
Yeah.
insulation, especially in our climate zone, is huge because you can have frosts or frozen pipes, or you can have all these different things. So it's like trying to take care of the details. Uh, for builders, we try really hard. You know, most builders, they're dealing with so many different things. They've got 12 different schedules going on. They've got warranty issues. They've got all kinds of things going on. So for us, we try and look at it like, okay, how can we solve a problem for them? Because all it is for the most part, it's just a lot of problems. And it's like, how do we solve a problem for them? If there's a warranty call, we're on it right away. And it's not, a lot of times it really doesn't involve us, but we like to jump in and try and figure out what the issue is. So we try and adopt like a problem solving mentality to help make the builder's life easier. So if it's a scheduling issue, we try and be there. We try really hard to meet the schedules that they have set for us. Um, for the most part, we do meet that. If we don't, we correct course and make sure it doesn't happen again. But we try really hard to keep the schedule, keep the quality. A lot of our customers, they trust us to do it right, that we're going to pass inspection, and that we'll be done when we say we'll be done. So in my mind, it's kind of like I don't want our customer to have to worry about us doing the job right and on time. That's something that I don't want them to have to think about. That's our job. We'll get it done. And then for an existing homeowner, you know, they want their problem solved. If they have 5 foot icicles on their roof, that can be structurally damaging. We're trying to fix their problem and help them with their heating and cooling bills. And it's not always a fun job crawling around in an old attic that's 60 years old in the middle of summer, um, but we're trying to solve their problem and make sure they're happy with the product they got. So, if their friend ever asks them, they've got a good referral for them, that someone that treated them with respect and did a good job for them and helped solve their problem.
Yeah. Something that you said there too that's really important, right? Is that golden rule of treating people the way you'd want to be treated. And so many of the businesses that I talk to or work with, the customer doesn't always have a good way to evaluate how well they did the actual work, right? In your case, they don't see the insulation, right?
Right,
So the only way they know if they trust this business, and you talked about how important trust is earlier, is how you treat them, right? So
right,
it's you think of it as not the same as the actual service that you provide, but it's actually almost as if not more important is how you treat them around the work that you do. And so it was interesting to hear you talk about.
Yeah, I think it's important. I, I personally, I just think that's the way to live life in general. But I think it really fits well into business because people they want to do business with people that they trust. They're spending their money on something, and they want to deal with someone that they can trust. And especially like we're going into people's homes or with a builder. They're placing a lot of trust in us to get things done right and on time, and we want to make sure we fulfill that. So,
Yep. Yeah, great. Well, as we move kind of toward the end here, Dan, you said it was Terry Cullen, a high school hockey coach, who brought you into this, right? Like, as you think back about your time with Terry, what's an enduring lesson that you've learned from him? Something that's really stuck with you about how to run a business well?
oh boy, I mean, Terry taught me a lot of things. He still does. I talk to Terry every day. He's been more than a friend to me. I mean, I've spent more time with Terry in the last 30 years than almost anyone. Probably even to my wife, I guess. Um, but you just being around Terry, the way he treats people, you know, as a boss, he holds people accountable, but he also treats them with respect, and that's kind of a fine line because you know, it's one of those things where you want to treat people correctly. It's tough to be their friend and their boss, but he managed to do that in a way where, um, people knew that he cared, and even if he had to be hard on you at times, you knew that he cared. And I think the thing that probably, I think, Eric would agree, he worked in the Fargo office here for years before he went and started Grand Forks, was that the biggest thing is that you need to pay attention to the details. And if you ever look back with some of the great coaches, Rick Pitino or some of these guys, it's like if you do the little things right, things will work out in the end. And it's little things like showing up for work at 5 a.m., doing your paperwork a certain way. Out on the job, we do things in a 5-step process, doing things the right ways. I tell my kids that too. It's like, I forget what the quote is, but something to the effect that, you know, discipline is huge. And discipline is doing what you don't feel like doing.
Yeah.
You do it anyway, because if
Yeah.
you do the little things right, even if you don't feel like it, that's a recipe for success. And, I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned from Terry is that you gotta do things the right way, even if you don't feel like doing it and you're tired, whatever. You got to do things the right way, and if you take care of the little details and do things right, for the most part, things work out the way you want.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I say that one of the secrets to success is that success is actually kind of boring.
Yeah,
It,
that's true.
it's the willingness. Yeah, you showed up at 5 o'clock today, but guess what we have to do tomorrow?
Right.
At 5 o'clock. Yeah, you filed your paperwork today, but guess what we got to do tomorrow?
Yep. No, it's yeah, you're right. I mean, you listen to some of these guys like Michael Jordan or whatever, and the little details, they're not great in the game because they're just a gifted basketball player. They're doing things in the gym for hours every day, just simple drills, simple things. I mean, they're doing things that aren't fun, but when game time hits, they're ready because it's just muscle
That's right.
memory.
I had the chance to talk to Tim Grover, Michael Jordan's
Oh yeah.
mental coach, right? And he said he sees all these people today who want to be like Mike. And it was even a
Hmm.
commercial, right? There's millions of people who want to be like Mike, and they think that means dunking or hitting game winning shots. And what he
Yeah.
said is Michael Jordan started every single practice with chest passes.
Yeah. Yep.
Doing the fundamentals.
Yeah. No, it's, I think that's probably true of a lot of great athletes. Like, my older son still plays professionally, and I see the stuff he does every day, and it's not exciting. It's just hard work and repetition and commitment.
Yeah. What does he play so we can watch for him?
Well, he plays with this year. He's with the Winnipeg Jets with their AHL team. They're kind of their farm program. He's trying to work his way up, but yeah, it's a battle. But it's his job, and he's year round. He's doing the little things and the weight training and the stick handling and the shooting and all these things that they're not always fun, but you make a commitment to do it, and it helps your game in the long run. So
Yep. Well, here, one last question, Dan. We've talked
yeah,
about how you've been with Cullen from 5 employees to 90, starting as a sales rep and estimator, and now as the president and co-owner. As you look ahead, where does Cullen go from here? What's your future vision for the company?
well, I mean that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, we don't have any. We don't have like a 5, 10 year long term plan. We want to make sure. I mean, we've had the opportunity to maybe start up another office, but we didn't feel like we were ready because we want to make sure the branches we have are firing on all cylinders and doing things like we talked about earlier, the way we want them done. And we're not interested in expanding until we're comfortable with what we have and we're doing everything right. And if things didn't change from the way they are now, if we're doing our 5 offices the way we want to do them and they're firing on all cylinders and we're doing things right, I mean, we enjoy what we're doing. Where we are in 5 years, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it depends on the market. Construction's been very busy for the last 15, 20 years. There's certainly been some valleys and some peaks, and it's cyclical, but I don't know exactly where we'll be in the future here in 5 years, but we're going to do our best to make sure the branches we have are optimized and doing what we want to do, and we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dan, this has been great. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. For people who want to follow you or learn more about Cullen, what's the best way to do that?
Probably the best way is our website, culleninsulation.com. We've got links to all of our branches. We've got a history of our business. There's kind of a story told and where we're all from or what we do. And yeah, we do. There's a link for free estimates or job applications. But that's probably the best place.
Great. Well, and we'll include all of those links in the show notes.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Thanks again for being on today. And for all of you listeners, if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend who's building something that they love so that you can help us keep sharing stories about businesses worth loving. I'm Nathan Schock, your host. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Nathan.